Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session of the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I'm David Stevenson, your host, and I'm joined this morning by Alan Davidson, who is the Chartered Accountant and the CEO of Penton's Business Advisors. Alan, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, David. Thanks for inviting me on.
And Alan will be taking us through a presentation this morning and then answering some questions at the end. The presentation will be about COVID-19 business continuity plans. Preparing a response to COVID-19 is critical. In this webinar, Alan will show you how you can maximize the UK government support to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on your business. The UK government has announced its economic response to the coronavirus and the support offered to small businesses. And in this webinar, Alan will go through all the up-to-date and confirmed business support schemes in detail and guide you through building your own business continuity plan to allow your business to survive in the current economic climate. So with that, I'll hand it over to Alan, and yes.
Thanks, David. So my name is Alan Davidson, and I'm Strategy Director at Penton's. I've got to say, I've never worked as hard as I have over the past few weeks, helping our customers as much as possible. And that helps. I've got a lot of experience. I've worked closely with over 500 business owners over the past 30 years. So I know what makes them tick, and I know what drives them mad as well. What I did last year, I put all of my thoughts in a book called Achieve Your Business Vision, which was a bestseller on Amazon, and last month was shortlisted as Business Book of the Year. But a little bit less about me and more about where we are now. So thanks to everyone for making time to listen in this important webinar. We appreciate that these are unprecedented times with massive uncertainty and concern for everyone. Now, we want you to know that we as accountancy, the whole profession, is here to help you, albeit remotely, and to give you whatever support we can give you in these difficult times. Our own personal mission is that we believe that we are here to help entrepreneurs and business owners change the world, and there's never been more need for that than there is now. So with this core purpose in mind, I'm here to share with you some practical things that you can do to mitigate the impact of the current COVID-19 pandemic on your business and your family life. Before we kick off, I just want to give you a thought for the day from this quote from JFK. I'll just move the screens a little bit. So when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger and the other represents opportunity. The two Chinese characters here are we and ji. Now, forgive the Geordie accent. Regardless of the fact that JFK was not entirely correct in his translation, the mistranslation is now so widely spread, it's even used by some native Chinese speakers. Now, undoubtedly, what we are faced with now is most certainly a crisis. And at the same time, it's a time of real opportunity. An opportunity for you to take a leadership role in helping your team at their greatest time of need. To be proactive in communicating with your customers, and to make a plan for a more sustainable and resilient business, or in the worst case, a plan to exit your business with the minimum negative impact on you and your team. So to quickly pop up an agenda. This is what I'm going to go through in the next half hour or so. First of all, it's about your mindset. Then it's about building a plan for yourself, your team, and your business. And then I'll outline the support that's available. Then we can go into the next steps, and then we'll have some time for questions. So we'll start with, it's time for you to take control of your business. This crisis really will pass. It might not seem like it at the moment, but the next few months are going to be difficult. We need to be ready to come out of this stronger, and we're going to be in a different economic landscape. It's not going to be the world it was just before we went. What we saw 3-4 months ago. It's not going to be like that. The future is going to be different, and we need to be adaptable and to be able to react. So start with this mindset. It's called all bed. and it's taken from one of Stephen Covey's book, and it's all about being in the right frame of mind. The most powerful business, this is one of the most powerful business models I've ever seen. In the times of crisis, we've got two choices about how we can respond. We can act below the line or above the line. What do I mean by that? Well, below the line, you can blame somebody. We can blame somebody else for bringing the virus into our country. We can make excuses why there's nothing we can do about it. Or we can go into denial that there's even an issue. And doing so, put ourselves at risk. Our team and our business could all be at risk if we do that. Or what we should do, what we can do, is take ownership of what we can and we must do to protect ourselves and our business, even if that means closing the business. We've got to recognize that we are accountable to our team and our customers in their time of greatest need, and then take responsibility for protecting ourselves, our team, our customers, and our business in these difficult times. The fundamental mindset here is that we have a choice and we don't want to take on the victim mindset. The next attitude is called the be, do, have attitude. So as well as acting above the line, we also need to consider who we need to be in these difficult times. In other words, what our personal brand and identity is. If we're not careful, we could act like this. So we could say, when I have got through these pressing customer matters, I'll be able to do things like make a plan to get through this and talk to my team about what all this means for them, so that I can then be a great leader of my business and my team. Now, a far better mindset is to be a great leader of my business and team and go the other way around. So in order to be a great leader of my business and team, I need to do things like update my plan and get proactive with my team and my customers during this hour of, in this time of crisis. And then I will have the most successful business I can in these times. And that gives rise to three types of person. You've got the victim, the worker, and the winner. The victim arranges their life in the order of have, do, be. So they say, when I have enough time, money, and support, I'll do the things I've always wanted to do, and I'll be happy and successful. The problem is, I don't have yet, and if I had what the other person had, I'd be as successful as them. But I don't, so I'm not. The victim is always waiting for externals to change before they can move ahead in life. Now the worker says, the more I do, the more I'll have. The more I'll have, the happier I'll be. The problem is, the more I do, the more there is still to do, and the more I still have, the more I have to, the more there is still to have. I'm defined by what I do, so I become driven, busy, and tired. The more I have, the more there is to lose, so the harder I work. We all know the link between having more things and being happier is a myth, so being happy never really arrives. The winner in all of this orientates their life quite differently. They say, it's not what do I need to have before I can start or work, or what work I need to do, but who I need to be. What kind of person would have access to the kind of outcomes I want? Then being that kind of person, what would I be doing? And then that takes care of the have itself. So think about things in a different way. So if you look at the example there, when I have more time, I'll spend it with my family and be a better parent. Becomes, I need to be the best parent now, so I must reduce my working hours to develop great relationships with my family. And hopefully that helps. So bear that in mind. And that brings us on to the business mindset. And this one's from Sir Richard Branson and serves as a great reminder as to where we need to place our most energy right now. So thinking about who we need to look after in these times. First and foremost, it's about you as the owner. But we also need to think about our team. And we also need to think about our customers. And we also need to look after the business. So what we find as owners is that all of our energy is split between the team, the customers, and the business itself, with very little time to look after ourselves. Now, Sir Richard Branson's quote is, "Customers do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the customers." So if we have a team, even if they're just contractors, make sure as an owner, you are looking after them. By looking after your team well, they will be well equipped to look after your customers. You might, for example, talk to your team about pivoting your sales plan to cope with these challenging times, maybe a new product or service, and the team can pass this message on to your new or existing customers. If you pivot your sales message and your team look after all of your customers, then these customers will look after your business. And once this sales plan is in place, the business will look after you as the owner. Now, I appreciate this may seem oversimplified, and some of you on the webinar won't have a team. The point here is it all starts with you as the owner. If you act above the line, remember who you need to be and make a plan now. It should start with your team, as they can then look after your customers, etc., so that you don't become overwhelmed. If you don't have a team in the plan, you need to start with your customers who will look after the business. And that's what today is all about. So knowing that the Richard Branson model starts with you as a business owner, let's talk about what you can do to improve your resilience right now. Well, your well-being is absolutely critical. Remember, on the plane, the safety flights, remember the first thing is put the oxygen mask on yourself first. So make sure that you stay healthy and get as much sleep as you can. Keep your exercise going and get support if you need it. Select your information sources carefully and try to minimize time spent on social media about the COVID-19 crisis. Stay calm, stay connected with friends and family, and stay positive. So focus on the needs of your family. Their health and well-being is extremely important. Make a plan for how they can be supported, especially if they've got to go into isolation. A very empowering thing you can do now is a personal budget. It doesn't have to be complex. It could be as simple as totaling your expenditure from the last 2 months, a month or two, to identify your personal monthly costs. And from there, identify where you can make savings. For example, on entertainment, coffee. Entertainment, coffee, travel, gifts, holidays, all of those have probably gone by the wayside now. So every saving you can make takes the pressure off what the business needs to provide for you. Obviously, don't cut essential utilities. You still need a strong and reliable internet connection. You still need your electricity on. Likewise, also think about personal asset planning and planning for your family. Things like making sure your personal insurances, your life and your income protection, make sure your wills are up to date. Make sure your memorandum of wishes is up to date. Make sure that you and your appropriate family members have powers of attorney in place. What happens if you're out of action for some reason? Now, there's the different kinds of powers of attorney to think about. If you're over 18 and have mental capacity to make financial and property decisions, you can arrange for someone else to make these decisions for you in the future. So this is called a power and financial affairs lasting power of attorney. Let's get one of those in place. There's another one, a separate one, to look after your daily routine, which is washing, dressing and eating. Moving into a care home, that kind of stuff. That's called a personal welfare lasting power of attorney, and that can only be used if you're unable to make your own decisions. And it's generally recommended that you set both of these up at the same time, both the personal welfare one and the property and financial affairs one. And many people do this whilst they're reviewing their wills. And you could use the solicitor you've got now, or you could just go straight for the power of attorney, get it online at gov.uk. Or there's a snail mail method if you get it in the post from the Office of the Public Guardian, but that will take longer. It's a brilliant time to make sure you've got these powers of attorney in place, or the ones if you've got them in place, make sure that the person that you've got to act in your place is still capable and willing to act and knows your wishes. It's critical that happens, otherwise things could go out of control. The next thing is to think about your team. Your team members are going to be worried about job security. We've seen so much furloughing recently. We hadn't heard the word until 3 weeks ago, and now everybody knows what furlough means, and a lot of people are on furlough. The government has stated that there are going to be job losses during this time, so we've got to be open with our teams, share the relevant parts of our plan with them, and be honest about the potential impact the pandemic could have on your business. If there's going to be job losses, make sure you've got the right legal and HR advice on the best ways to handle restructuring and redundancy. Now, it's likely that people are going to remain at home in some form of lockdown for weeks, possibly months. You've got to decide what additional resources you might need to provide your team. If you haven't done it already, consider how you can best utilize technology to maintain team communications. You've got to try and get paperless. You've got to try and get all the technology in place to make it work for you and your business. Make sure you've got a COVID-19 policy in place to keep your team safe, and let them know what support is available to them. We'll cover government support in more detail shortly. Next, it's your customers. So the support you offer your customers is now, whatever you're doing now is going to come back and help you in the future. It'll impact how they support you in the future. Customers need to be reassured that you're still operating and that you're taking specific measures to mitigate their exposure to the virus. Your policy should cover the steps your business is taking to protect your customers. You share this with them to offer reassurance that you're there taking every practicable step to reduce the risk and protect both your customers and your team. Then review your terms of business and update the terms to reflect the change in business practices. Share your updated terms of business with your customers and highlight the key changes. In particular, review your payment terms and delivery terms. Now, it may be pandemic time, but you still have to enforce your terms of trade at this time. Don't let the customers avoid paying you, as this could have a material impact on the sustainability of your business. And just as we mentioned earlier, to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, it's essential that you make sure you've got sufficient cash coming into the business from your customers and from the government, if you can, if it's relevant. Cash is the oxygen your business needs to survive, and we'll talk more about cash flow management shortly, as there are always things that you can do here. Next, it's suppliers. To improve your cash flow, make a plan for dealing with your suppliers. Where you can, negotiate new payment terms with your suppliers. If you can pay up front, ask for a prompt payment discount. If you don't have sufficient cash flow to pay up front, ask to pay over a longer period of time. Ask if it's possible to hold stock on consignment, where you only pay the supplier once you've sold the stock. Discuss your supplier's supply chain and the measures they're taking to continue supply. Ask about their contingency plans for what may happen if deliveries can't be made or supplies can't be obtained. Consider whether you need to order additional stock while it's available, and if it's likely to become scarce in the coming months. Reduce your current minimum reordering levels and consider whether there are some items of stock that should not be reordered at all. Instead of having a wide range of stock, perhaps focus on some key items and don't tie as much cash up in your stock. Then review your supplier contracts in regard to return of stock. Discuss whether you can return excess stock that isn't selling. Ensure contracts are updated if any terms change. And if you can't return stock, then consider discounting slow moving stock to convert it back to cash. Don't reorder the same stock. Review the contracts you've got with suppliers. Is there a clause which would allow you to cancel orders or change the terms in this current crisis? If you can't meet the terms of the contract, seek legal advice and renegotiate with the supplier if you can. Review all other key contracts with your landlords, vehicle and equipment lessors, and you might be able to renegotiate significant terms. Do not assume that these contracts can't be renegotiated. There are some cash-rich people out there, and they will do deals. As your current cash flow and ability to meet your financial obligations, your ability to trade and meet your financial obligations could be significantly impacted if you haven't taken these steps. If I just do this quick example so you can see what I mean, I'll just put this on the screen. Taking a £1 million business with particular, I'm not going to change anything to do. So £1 million business with profits of 85,000 and daily turnover of 2,740. If this business is a wholesaler, the wholesaler buys stock from suppliers and on average must pay the suppliers 45 days after buying the stock. The stock doesn't sell the moment it comes into the warehouse, so some stock sells quickly, other stocks it takes longer, and eventually some stock has to be discounted to get it to move at all. On average, stock sits for 60 days on the shelf. When the stock is sold, credit terms are provided to customers, but a number of customers are not observing these credit terms. On average, it takes 60 days for customers to pay, 60 days. So we can see that the cost conversion cycle for this business, 60 days for average stock holding, 60 days to get paid, 45 days credit from suppliers, gives a 75-day cash cycle. That 75 days in this business is £201,000 of cash tied up. Now, obviously you put your own numbers in here, but if this manufacturer could get the customer payment terms down to 10 days and was clever with his stock, only bought the right kind of stock, he could get his payment days, his stock shelf life day down to 10 days. And instead of needing £200,000, he actually, by trading, will produce £60,000 of cash. So that's a £260,000 swing. That is the importance of changing your terms. The next thing is, so I've talked about cash conversion cycle. Next thing is 7 ways to grow your business. There are only 7 ways, and you might have seen this before, but only this time I want to show the model, how it could impact how it could be used to reduce the negative impact of a downturn. So client retention, what can you do to delight your customers right now? Many of them will also be struggling to stay in contact. So stay in contact and see how you can hold on to their business wherever possible. Then you've got lead generation. You should also be looking for new avenues to attract potential new customers, increasing your marketing using cost-effective methods. Social media could be a great way to attract new business. You need to learn new skills. Your prospect conversion ratio. Make sure you are making it as easy to buy from you as possible without giving value away. Get those credit card options in place. Get direct debit in place. Get any easy way to pay in place. Can you offer delivery, online, and can you move your business online at this time? Then you've got transaction value. You work so hard to get a customer to the door. Make sure you're selling all support and products and services that they might not be aware of. If you think about the example of the shoe shop, you buy your shoes, they always offer to bundle in and sell cleaning products or something to keep the shoes in the new style that you're buying. Then there's transaction frequency. What can you do to encourage customers to come back more regularly? For example, locking in the next purchase. When they've finished the last transaction, lock in the next purchase or order or a meeting at the end of the current transaction, or at least ask for a referral for a new customer if your work is more of a one-off nature. Then there's reducing cost of sales. What can you do to preserve your current margins? Can you reduce errors or rework, get a better price from your suppliers, or focus on the products or services that give you the greatest margin? Can you reduce overheads? Back to the old travel, entertainment, and vehicle costs could all be a good place to start. The next thing, look at your insurance policies. Now, lots of business policies have exclusions for COVID-19, but we've come across several clients who are winning and are putting in successful claims. So check your business interruption insurance. Then make sure you've got HR in place. Make sure you've got HR insurance. People have moved, you've got, with HR, everybody's on furlough. Have you got the letters in place? Have you got the board minutes in place if you're a director? With everybody being spread around, make sure you've got lots of property is up to date for laptops and computers being in people's houses. Have you got statutory liability? Are you covered for employees working from home? Does your employment liability cover that? Is your PI up to date? Again, with the different circumstances, you need to check all your policies. And what happens if something happens to one of the shareholders? Have you got your key person and your shareholder buyouts in place? It's something we do regularly with our clients, but it quite often gets missed. Next, the big one. Have you got all the government support that's available? This is a quick summary of everything that's out there. So business rates holiday, this should happen automatically, but you may need to claim if you're not in the rate, if the council have got you down wrongly on the system. Now, we've got some clients who are going to need to appeal. We've got other clients who've, it's all going really smoothly. The business grants, certainly in Canterbury, which is where I am now, they're actually landing in people's accounts today. Other councils paid out up to a fortnight ago, and some councils still haven't done it yet. It's all down to your local council. Check their website and make sure everything's in place. It's just a reminder: if you get small business rate relief or rural rent relief, and your business rate value is less, your rateable value is less than 15,000, you automatically are going to get £10,000 per business. And if you are in the retail, hospitality and leisure business and your rateable value is less than 51,000, you will get a 25k grant. The deferral of that could be a quick cash flow improvement. If you've got VAT due, too late for April. If you've got VAT due in May or June, there's an automatic deferral, and you will still have to pay. You'll have to pay by next 31st of March, but you need to cancel a direct debit if you're on direct debit and you want to take advantage of that. There are changes to statutory sick pay, working tax credits, and universal credit. As an employer, you need the upside is that you can now claim statutory sick pay. It's worth about £190 per person if they take 2 weeks off. Then there's the job retention scheme. This is massive. This is a furlough. The portal was announced that it will be open yesterday. Sorry, it was announced yesterday that it will be open on the 20th of April. It's open to directors, so long as they aren't working on the income side of the business and they're not generating income and they're only doing statutory duties, but only for the PAYE elements of what they do. Then there's the self-employed. Oops. Didn't mean to click that button. Then there's a self-employed income support scheme. The HMRC will contact you. It's all based on what's on their records. It's a massive data exercise for them. The downside is they're not going to be paying this out until the well, they say the 1st of June at the earliest, I would say, because there's an awful lot of admin to go through and they need to shift resources to that. You may need to then think about the business interruption loan scheme, where the government are guaranteeing 80% of the loans. There's been a lot of change over the last week with that, and now the banks are being much more helpful, although still, they struggle with the numbers. Some banks, I read some stats yesterday, one bank which normally had about 150 applications in a year had 1,500 applications in a week. So their numbers and their ability to cope, you need to make your applications as easy as possible and as easy to understand as possible. If you're going to need bank assistance, this is what you need. You need the last 3 full years of accounts. You need, well, you can read it all on the screen. The one thing that the banks have relaxed a little bit in the last week is the need to produce, some of the banks, a 12-month cash flow forecast. However, you would be negligent, I think, if you didn't produce a cash flow forecast. If you're going to take out a chunky loan, you need to have an idea, even if it's not guaranteed, of where the money's, how your money's going to be paid back. So with that, we have this. We've built, for our clients. You can get this off our website if you ask for the resources. We built a really easy. You've got a weekly, monthly cash flow tool, which does it all for you, and it just makes life easier. But you need to take that into account before you sign on the bottom line. The other things there, Most of the banks want statements of personal assets. Whether or not they're supposed to ask for it, it's what they want. If you start fighting the bank now over what you want to give them, then it's going to be is delays. And emergency money is not great if there's going to be a big delay. So that's where we are with that. So just to summarize, we set out the mindsets, what you need to do to look after yourself, your team, your customers, shared some ideas on how you can improve your sales, your margin, your profit, cash flow, even in any improvement, even if the improvement is just going to slow the speed of decline. I've shared in general terms what support is available from the government. And now it's essential that you decide what you're going to do. Clearly, doing nothing is not an option. Now's the time to put the oxygen mask on yourself and make a plan to get through the crisis. Even if that plan involves closing your business, you're better off to make that decision sooner rather than later. Part of the planning is to surround yourself with experts, us, your bank, your legal or HR advice, your accountant, your bank and your legal or HR advisors. We're all here to help you. Remember to stay above the line and live the be, do, have mindset. Focus on what you can do. With this in mind, we've developed a business continuity plan and a guide, which I'll briefly show you now. There we are. So I'll just click this and it should open up. So this is available on our website, pentins.co.uk. And this goes through in much more detail everything I've just talked about, how to do it, a bit more guidance on everything. And that will also, just click back. That also gives you the link. We can work with you to do it, or you can do it yourself. It's free. That's a different story. When we did it for our clients, we did it for free. So now it's questions and answers time. I've gone through a lot of information, and it's a chance for you to ask any questions you've got. So over to you,
Alan. That's great. That's really kind. Thank you. That was a very informative presentation. Very much covers all the sort of key bases there, and it sounds like there are some great resources available on the Pentins website, cash flow forecasts, and the ability to to help with any questions there. So if people want to get in touch with Alan or Pentins, the website is www.pentins.co.uk. I'm going to put that on the chat there. So please make use of those resources there, everyone. Now, excuse me, we have some questions here, Alan, so I'll start taking them.
Okay.
We have a question here from Kevin, who is a company owner-director, and I have furloughed my 5 employees, and he's wondering how he can cover his wage. Is that something you can speak to? Yes.
Well, obviously, I don't know the circumstances, Kevin, but if you've got, you're eligible to get the business rates grant. There's no direct help for a director as such, other than if you're I'm assuming you're on a normal director salary, which is a low salary and high dividends. The only help there is to furlough yourself if you're not producing income, if you're not working on income generating activities. So you can furlough yourself, and that would give you 80% of your PAYE element of your salary. But other than that, you can look for the business grants. If you're a small business and have pay business rates, you should be eligible for the £10,000 for business grant. So, okay.
Excellent. So it sounds like there is, company directors are in a sort of unique situation in that there is no direct support really as such.
That's right. Well, the salaries, it depends on their situation, but they could have help for their salaries, but not if they're doing income generating activities. It's very woolly, but it's pretty clear that if you're doing income, so if you're making sales, you can't furlough yourself. But if all you're doing is looking after your VAT return, your the admin of the business, then you can furlough yourself.
And it's 80% of your PAYE salary.
You can do it for a minimum of 3 weeks. So you can furlough yourself for 3 weeks, bring yourself back for a week, and potentially furlough yourself again for 3 more weeks. It cuts down the amount that you can claim, but it might make it easier in terms.
And it is, sorry, there is a ceiling at 2,500.
Right. Ceiling of £2,500.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we have another question here from Robin, which is a sort of follow-up question to that one. So asking if it's okay to furlough directors if they're just doing admin. How about applying for a loan? Does that count?
Yeah, if you're applying for, that's fine, because there are 6 duties that the directors are allowed to do. So it's in the Companies Act. We'll put a link on our website for that. But essentially, that is allowed. If you're looking after the best interest of your company to keep it alive, then that would be fine.
That would be fine. So as long as there's no actual selling going on, then you are able to do so. Yeah. Great. Well, hopefully that answers Kevin and Robin's questions. Now, this is a sort of addendum to Kevin's question. We are a small engineering company of 5 employees with a turnover of around 300,000. However, we have a yard we work from with a rateable value of 6,800, yep, and a storage unit rateable value of 7,100. Do we qualify for rate relief?
So was that 2 properties?
It does sound that way, yeah. So a yard and a storage unit.
Yeah, if that's over 15,000.
It was under 15, so 6,800 and 7,100. So what is that? 13,900.
Yes, because there are 2 separate properties. If they're linked into one, it may be that you need to speak to the rates people. If they're linked and can be linked into one property, get it re-rated to be one property of both of them added together to be less than 15,000, then you would get the small business rate relief. However, if they're 2 separate properties, they're not linked, you wouldn't get the 10,000 grant. I
see. Okay, so hopefully that answers that. Kevin, it sounds like you may want to try and get them re-rated.
Yeah.
There wasn't a follow-up from Robin's question, and I think you may have touched on this, but perhaps you could just take us through it again. Is how long will it take HMRC to rebate you for furloughed employees?
Well, their system opens on the 20th of this month, and I don't think anybody really knows how the system's going to cope with a vast, massive volume. I think the government would like to pay before the end of April, but I think in reality it's probably going to slip into the second week of May, to being realistic. So, but that's a best guess, really. Nobody knows.
Okay. Yes. So there's not really clarity there. Obviously, this is a new situation for everyone, HMRC included.
Can I just say on that one, you need to be able to get it, you need to have an ePAYE reference. And that's important because you're going to have to log in to claim. Now, it takes about a week, possibly 2 weeks in this current scenario to get one of those numbers. All it is really, it sounds fancy, but it's a web login to your company PAYE account. Not everybody's got this. Or if you have an agent, if they're going to do it for you, they need to have you with a 64.8, which is a letter of authority from the taxman, which is specifically for PAYE. If those 2 things aren't in place, then there'll be a delay of another further 2 weeks, because it's going to take that long to get that registration. So what I would do, if you check today, if you can do that, because you can do the registration now, get that in place so that by the 20th, then you're ready.
That's good advice. Thank you, Alan. Okay. We have another question here from Piers, who's asking, he is a company director, but has only hired subcontractors who are now no longer under contract.
Okay.
I have only ever taken a dividend as an income, and now business has stopped. It's a cruise line industry. Is there any way to receive relief income from the government?
No, there isn't. The only option really is to look at universal credit. I'm not an expert, but we do have a big help guide on universal credit on our again, sounds like I'm pushing our website, but it is on our website to help. That's the only option, because with no salary, there's no option to furlough, and you're not technically self-employed because you've earned dividends. Your subcontractors, though, should be okay. They should be able to claim on the subcontractor, on the self-employed relief, which, you know, it's not great for you, but it will help them.
And I noticed in the presentation that it said that HMRC would be contacting people under that self-employed scheme. Is that right?
Yeah, they've got the data. They have everybody's tax return. They will use, essentially, they'll just put a big data query in, and that will pop up with the answer, and then they'll contact the people. The issue with self-employed is they have very little bank information on individuals. So you're going to have to, they're going to contact you and say, please give us your bank information, and then we can make the payment. It's all about the practicalities, really. That's the reason. That's also the reason the self-employed scheme was set up the way it is. It's all basically based on data that the government already had. It means some people fall out of the system because they're in, you know, either they've just started trading, which means they don't have any records, but equally it reduces the risk of fraud. And that's great for everybody, because the more fraud there is, the more we're going to have to pay back in the long term, because in a few years' time, we're all going to be paying back all of these grants and all of this furlough money. It's all going to be paid back to the government.
Via increased taxes, you reckon? Yeah,
by taxes, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Alan. We have another question here from William, asking whether HR directors can be furloughed on the basis that they are only doing admin supporting employees.
In theory, yes. But if you're full-time supporting employees, then I think that probably will fall foul of the idea is you're not doing anything except the basic minimum. If you're doing your full-time role as an HR director, then that's certainly not in the spirit of furloughing. So we don't know what the anti-avoidance is going to be, and what they've said is that they're going to pay out everything that gets claimed, but they're going to retrospectively look back, and they're going to claim back from people who are proved to have done it either incorrectly or, in the worst case, fraudulently. And then there'll be penalties, interest. It's not in your interests to just claim if you don't have a valid reason. I wouldn't, if you're an HR director, doing a full-time role, I wouldn't claim the furlough.
Okay, thank you, Alan. That doesn't sound like that would be advised in that situation.
Yeah.
We have another question here from Gwen, who has a new 14-month-old privately held small business who isn't paying business rates due to the fact that they're renting their premises from a charity. So they're asking whether this disqualifies them from the £10,000 grant, which I think it does.
It would do, yeah, it would, yeah. Yeah, if you've got a bill, from your council, which last year, which has the small business rates relief on it, then you will get the grant. If, as I said earlier, if you've been categorized wrongly, then you should be able to get the grant. In that case, it might be worth speaking to the council, explain the situation, and that you are you're not a charity. The charity owns the property, but you are a trading business. Then it's certainly worth an appeal.
And is there a possibility to appeal to the charity itself? Would the charity be getting that grant and then perhaps pass some of that on? Or?
No, well, the way it's normally done is the tenant should be the ratepayer, the business ratepayer. If the tenant's the business ratepayer, then they can deal directly with There are many cases, people have never really worried about council tax until now, because it was never a form, it was always a payment thing. But there's some where the landlords include the rent and the rates all in one thing. There's some where the rates are split out and you get the benefit. It all depends on individual circumstances.
There was a sort of a follow-up to that question from Gwen, asking whether there are other COVID-19 grants that people may be eligible for. It's my understanding that they're rates specific, really.
Each council, you need to check your own council's website. Each council does have some hardship. They're all different. Our council has a small hardship grant fund. Kent County Council, which is a wider area for us, they do have a hardship fund. There are some hardship funds out there, and I would go to your council website first.
Well, that's excellent information, because we've had I haven't heard that these hardship funds do exist. So that's new information, very helpful. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
So well, let's just wait a few minutes here, a few moments, and see whether some more questions do come through. But that's been an incredibly informative presentation, and it sounds like there are some accountancy firms that have closed.
Yes. Yes, there are at least 4 firms that I know of that have actually closed their doors. I've never worked as hard as I have in the last 4. I don't know why. I don't know how they've done it. I don't know how their consciences can cover it, really, because their clients need help.
Indeed, it sounds like I know a lot of people have a lot of questions. And if your accountant has closed, it's important that you do liaise with an accountant to make sure that you are complying with the rules, because the HMRC will be imposing a review of any activities taken. So you want to make sure that the activities you're taking are in line with your accountants or an accountant's at least understanding of what the rules are, to make sure you're acting in good faith and don't face any problems in the future. Pensions is open for business, and you have a lot of resources on your website that are free to use for people. So definitely worth checking those out. And if you do need help, you can get in touch with Pensions via the website.
Yes, yeah, it's all on there. Yeah.
Contact number, everything on there. Great.
Okay.
Well, Alan, I think that brings us to the end of the questions. But it's been a pleasure having you on this morning. A very, very helpful and clear presentation, which we very much appreciate. And obviously, very much appreciate you giving us your time this morning. And I know everyone else does. Oh wait. We have one late question coming through. Lots of thank you messages. Tax thought. This is a question. Is a question about tax. By extending your year-end to include this presumably loss-making period, will it reduce the CT payment?
Interestingly, yes, it would.
Okay.
Andrew, yeah, it potentially could. If you extend certain parts, the way corporation tax is done, it's done in 12-month chunks. So that if you extend your years, let's say you move it to 18 months is the longest you can do. You've got to check. You can only do it if you haven't done it within the last 5 years. If you extend it to 18 months, you then average down your profits from over the whole 18 months, and then do 12/18ths of the profit in the first period and 6/18ths in the second period. The payment dates for the first period will stay the same. You will still have to pay the tax after 9 months on the first 12 months, but that 12 months, as you're right, Andrew, that could help. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's a good question, and thank you for that. Another message of thanks here from Julia. Excellent presentation, very informative. It really was an excellent presentation, so thank you for that.
Okay.
Yes. So well, good luck, everyone, and I hope you have a good Easter weekend, or able to take some rest. And yes, things will go on, and as Alan said, it's good to prepare for the future and make sure that when things do bounce back, crisis does bring opportunity, and we will get back to normal, at some stage in the not too distant future. So remain positive, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David.
Thanks.